Today we are exploring the older versions of Stardew Valley, starting with the very first version released back in 2016 on Steam. We'll take a look at the visual and gameplay improvements introduced over the years, covering the journey from launch to the present day. This will be a deep dive into Stardew Valley's evolution, but I won't be covering every single patch and update individually. There have been a total of 217 updates since its release on February 26, 2016. Instead, we'll start with the initial Steam version and then highlight key updates and changes that were made each year. So grab your watering can and let's dig into the roots of Stardew Valley. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Pixelated Quest, and if you like this video, please consider subscribing to my channel or leaving a like or a comment. Now let's dive in. Stardew Valley today looks like this. But it wasn't always this expensive. The original 2016 version was a bit simpler, both in terms of visuals and features. Despite minimal graphical changes over the years, the game is celebrated for its countless updates. But what exactly has changed? Let us find out. For this video, we'll examine how the intro sequence evolved, explore notable locations across versions, and analyze the gameplay mechanics added over time. Let's get started. Now let's start with the very first version of Stardew Valley, released nearly 9 years ago on February 26, 2016. This initial version was officially titled 1.0. Unlike many games today, Eric Barone chose not to use Steam Early Access for its game. Instead, he released a fully polished version from the start. Let's begin with the main menu and the character creation screen. Compared to today's version, the character creation system was quite basic. Aside from many options and features missing from the original version, one stands out for me: the absence of a bald hairstyle. Perhaps Barone wasn't too worried about hairlines back then, but it seems he forgot about bald people. Other features and options are also missing, but we will come to that in a bit. Since baldness isn't an option in Stardew Valley 1.0, I'll stick with the default hairstyle. This is particularly important because the save file we create here will be carried through to every subsequent version of the game as we continue this journey. Now, one of the most baffling design choices in Stardew Valley 1.0 wasn't the missing bald option, it was this: the dreaded animal preference. As someone who loves both cats and dogs, this was one of the hardest decisions I had to make. Once that part was behind us, we were greeted with the intro screen. The first part of the intro features your grandpa giving you a letter, which we open 20 years later. This, along with the scene of you working at your soul-draining Joja job, has remained completely unchanged throughout the years. Next comes the iconic bus ride to Stardew Valley. This sequence also stayed largely the same, though there are a few subtle differences. Let me play the 2016 version side by side with the 2024 version so you can see for yourself. How many differences did you spot? Let me know in the comments. What I noticed were the changes in the passing car color, the background trees, and how the camera centers on the town sign, but there might be more. After the bus ride, the intro continues with Robin and Mayor Lewis welcoming you to Stardew Valley. Their dialogue and the sequence have also stayed largely consistent over the years. Once the intro concludes, we dive into the gameplay. On the very first day, you're greeted with a present, which has remained the same, although the animations have been slightly updated. For this video, I planted parsnips, which we'll continue cultivating and harvesting throughout the newer game versions. After that, I wandered around the town briefly, exploring various areas in this version of the game. Next, I received my fishing rod and tried out the fishing minigame. After catching a fish, I took a moment to glance at the in-game menu to note how it looks compared to the later versions. One thing that stood out in this version 1.0 was the game sometimes crashed if you had a pet. There was also a particular error item that could be purchased at the saloon, this thing right here. After completing the first 2 days, selling a few items I found, and wrapping up my early exploration, we're officially finished with the first version of Stardew Valley. Now we jump to a year later with Stardew Valley version 1.2.7, released on February 2nd, 2017. I won't cover every bug fix made during this time, but I'll highlight the most notable additions and features from 2016 to 2017. For a full changelog, please check the link in the description of this video. Some major updates include new farm layouts, expanded marriage candidates with Shane and Emily, localization support, and various gameplay enhancements and bug fixes. The main menu now features translations, a big step forward compared to the previous version. The character creation menu also received updates, allowing us to explore new features. For this video, I'll create a new game in each version to examine changes to the intro, but I'll continue playing the save file we've created in version 1.0 for the main gameplay. Looking at the character creation menu, we now have 4 additional game modes: Riverland Farm, Forest Farm, Hilltop Farm, and Wilderness Farm. Yet disappointingly, a bold hairstyle is still not an option. Seriously, Eric? As for the intro, it remained largely the same, compared to the version 1.0. However, the bus ride animation did change slightly. The car color is different, and the bird at the end no longer makes a jump. Other than that, the intro is virtually identical to the original version. After reviewing the intro, I went back to the main menu and loaded our save file created in version 1.0. Since it was raining on day 3, I decided to skip the day and show the in-game menu instead. One small addition here is the ability to exit to the title screen, which wasn't possible in the first version. Next day the rain cleared, so I explored a few in-game locations and compared them to the previous version. Starting with our house, then Pierre's store, the pier, and then the area above Robin's house. I found no significant visual changes. Next I tried fishing again and found no changes in the mechanics or visuals here either. One noticeable improvement though was the opacity effect when objects obscure your character, as seen here. Finally, before jumping ahead to the 2018 version, I want to point out a small detail. There is no rain animation on the window when it's raining outside, even in the default house layout. To be fair, I don't think this is added even in the current version either. Moving on to the next update, version 1.3.32, released on November 19, 2018. Notable additions during the time between the last version and this one include the introduction of a multiplayer system, allowing players to farm together on a shared plot. The game was also ported to consoles and mobile platforms, along with a variety of performance improvements, particularly for farms with many animals and light sources. Additionally, gameplay was also rebalanced, and you can now refill the watering can from the kitchen sink. As always, if you're interested in the full changelog, the link is in the description of this video. The first noticeable update is the addition of the co-op button in the main menu compared to the previous version. The character creation system, however, remained the same as in 2017, and unbelievably, there's still no bold hairstyle. Really, Eric? Wow. The game intro also stayed largely unchanged. The only difference I spotted was the passing car again, which had a new color. Aside from that, every other part of the intro is identical to the previous version. Returning to the main menu, I load up the save file we've been playing since version 1.0. Checking the in-game menu, there weren't any noticeable changes aside from the addition of new items in the game. However, since this isn't a playthrough video, we won't be seeing all the new content here. Now, let's take a look at the game's visuals to see if any locations have changed. Starting with our house, Pierre's store, the pier, and the area above Robin's house. I found no significant visual updates compared to the previous version. I also attempted some fishing to check for any updates to this mechanic. Unfortunately, there weren't any changes here either. With that, we're done with the version 1.3.32 and ready to move on to the next update. A few updates and 365 days later, we're now at the game version 1.4, released on November 26, 2019. Between 2018 and 2019, many updates were made, but I'll highlight just a few of the most notable ones. Fishing ponds were introduced as a new farm building, along with the addition of the Four Corners farm. endgame content was extended, featuring a new mystery in the late game, new events, and even 14 new heart events. There was also a quality of life update, and 60 new items, clothing and decorations were added, along with the Junimo Kart minigame. The main menu saw updates as well, including new language translations being added to the game. Now, looking at the character customization, we notice a few changes compared to a year ago. The Four Corners farm was introduced, pet selection was updated with new pet styles, and most importantly, hairstyle number 53, the bulb hairstyle, was added. As for the intro, nothing has changed except for the passing car, which again has a different color. So, I jump into the main menu and load up the save file from a year ago where we left off. The first thing I notice is the flower petal animation were added, these things here. Now, let's take a look at the locations to see if there have been any visual changes. First, we have our house. Then we check Pierre's shop, the pier, and above Robin's house. Everything looks the same as it did before, except for the seasonal animations, which in our case feature falling flower petals. Next, I try fishing, wondering if there have been any visual or mechanical changes. Again, nothing has changed here. Looking at the in-game menu, we can now click on individual NPCs to see their birthday and the gifts we've given them. This is a new addition. Other than that, the game still feels and plays as it always did up to this point. So I'll conclude this version and move on to the next. Now let's jump ahead another year to the game version released on December 25th, 2020, titled 1.5.1. The updates from 2019 to 2020 were many and significant, but I'll highlight just a few of the major ones. With the introduction of Ginger Island, a whole new region was added, significantly expanding the game world. This update also brought new characters, including Leo, Birdie, Professor Snail, and the Island Trader. Additionally, there was a volcano dungeon, an island farm where crops could grow year-round, and an island resort feature where villagers could take vacations. Split-screen co-op was also introduced during this time. The main menu stayed the same as it was before, but the character creation system did change slightly. For example, the beach farm was introduced, and while we're at it, I forgot to switch back to the default farm, so the intro for this version will feature the beach farm. Additionally, game options were introduced, allowing players to tweak various events surrounding the first in-game years and other farm-related options. Looking at the intro animations, everything remains the same except for the color of the car driving by and the fact that there are no trees along the road. Other than that, the intro remains the same. As mentioned before, I accidentally selected the beach farm here, but the intro still plays out the same as always. Now I go back and load the game file we started in the 2016 game version and have continued playing throughout every subsequent update. Again, checking the usual locations, we see our house, Pierre's shop, the pier, and above Robin's house. Here we can see that the previous tree was replaced, but visually everything else remained the same. In the game menu, under the character tab, a new conversation field was added, but aside from that, it remains largely unchanged from before. Moving on to version 1.5.5, released on December 8, 2021. A few notable improvements from the 2020 version to this 2021 update include enhanced modding support, stability improvements, and various bug fixes, including a severe memory leak. Character customization in this version remained the same as it was a year ago. The same can be said for the intro, including the bus ride, where only the car color has changed again, but everything else is identical. So I head back to the main menu and load up the save game we have been using since version 1.0. Checking the usual locations for any changes, I visit our house, Pierre's shop, the pier, and above Robin's house. This brings me to the conclusion that no world changes were made, and that the new tree above Robin's house, which was replaced in the 2020 version, is here to stay. Fishing also remains the same as it always has, along with the in-game menu, which didn't see any changes either. Since not many notable improvements were made during the past year, I decided to skip ahead from 2021 version to 2024. Now we're playing the version released on November 12, 2024, the 1.6 version. Since we skipped a few game versions, a lot must have changed, right? Well, not really. Notable updates during this time include new character dialogues to deepen relationships, new pet models, and the addition of a new map. There was also more balance adjustments, bug fixes, and an expansion of modding capabilities for creators. In character customization, we can see that the game now features new pets and a Meadowland farm was added. The game intro has changed a bit, but not much, mainly the bus ride. Trees were added to the ditch behind the grass, and the camera now centers to the town sign at the end, unlike before. Additionally, the bird jumps again, just as it did in the early versions. Other than that, the intro remains the same. Looking at the usual locations, our house, Pierre's shop, the pier, and above Robin's house, reveals that visually the game is largely the same. However, there is a slight difference. While recording this footage, I noticed that another tree was replaced in the passage between your farm and the forest area below. This large tree on the left wasn't there in previous versions. Additionally, the in-game menu has changed slightly. 2 new tabs were added, Animals and Special Items and Powers. The skill tab layout has also been redesigned a bit. Other than that, the game remains visually the same, with a few additions, such as the quest board in town and similar small updates. And that concludes this video. We've journeyed from the initial game version released in late 2016 all the way up to 2024, witnessing various updates and improvements that have shaped the game into what it is today. However, to be fair, much of the game was already there in 2016, aside from the world expansion features. Will there be future Stardew Valley updates? It's likely, but it's uncertain whether there will be any significant content updates or new features. In a recent GamesRadar interview, Eric said he's currently focused on bringing version 1.6 of Stardew Valley to consoles, which is preventing him from working on his new game, Haunted Chocolatier. This suggests that since he's working on his other project, Stardew Valley may not receive any major updates moving forward. However, since Haunted Chocolatier is likely to be released around 2026, there's still time for a potential update featuring new content and features for Stardew Valley during that period. Let's hope that is the case. But if not, we can always enjoy the incredible experience that Eric has already created with Stardew Valley. Congratulations to the winners of this giveaway, listed here. Send me an email to claim your Steam key. If you also want to participate in the next giveaway, which will be in the next video I release, simply subscribe to my channel. I will be picking 5 random subscribers with each video releasing. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to my channel and leaving a like or a comment. This would help me make more such videos and grow my channel. Have a wonderful day.